The purpose of the word transgender was to create a broader term than transsexual, or people who medically transitioned and often felt they were male or female. Transsexual fell out of favor when it confused the general public about the sexuality of trans people, and it's actually now largely considered a pejorative or dated term. So only some trans people use it. Transgender, on the other hand, was and still is considered a large amount of gender diversity, including people with or without body dysphoria. Now, there's a group who are trying to argue that trans folks without body dysphoria actually aren't transgender and are capitalizing off of trans identity. There's another large group that argues anyone who has ever claimed any sort of queer or trans identity are valid and can't ever be questioned under any circumstances. Now, the groups aren't necessarily as rigid as that, but those are generally the two camps. I want to address both of these frameworks that need to be critically engaged with and largely transformed. Admitting that not all trans people have dysphoria won't prevent us from obtaining healthcare. It simply means that not all of us need it. One of the foundational arguments of transmedicalism is that trans is a medical condition. I'll admit, I used to believe this too. I thought that being trans was a medical condition and that this would help us gain treatment, until I actually did more research and learned there's no evidence for this. No study has ever actually proven or even indicated there was some sort of innate biological difference between trans or cis people. Now, I also want to briefly touch on the other side of the debate, that all people's pronouns and genders are valid under any circumstances whatsoever. This isn't necessarily helpful either. There are some, well, a few exceptions. And here I'll start with an anecdote. One time in college, I noticed a trend of cis women using she/they pronouns. Now, many people actually need they pronouns to exist, and cis people using them may accidentally delegitimize non-binary people. When I asked one of these cis women about it, when I was getting annoyed, she actually apologized and realized she was doing it for social capital in queer spaces. By attaching they to her pronouns, she felt more confident to speak in queer spaces about trans issues, because it sort of hid how cis she was. And I should add, this is a rare exception in a small liberal arts college. This does exist and is kind of an issue, but at the same time, we should be skeptical of people saying anyone who uses they pronouns isn't valid. This simply just isn't correct and isn't ethical. One other example where gender might not be valid would be white people identifying themselves as indigenous social categories, like Hydra or Two-Spirit, which does happen quite often. These categories are, of course, only usable by the cultures that they belong to in that specific context. Not having dysphoria is definitely a privilege. Not the erasure from the community, that also sucks, but rather having the feeling that certain body parts are simply wrong, feeling distressed over your body. This doesn't mean that these same people are invalid. Rather, they're in a position of power. And then finally, I also want to swing back to social dysphoria. If trans medicalists argued you need social dysphoria to be trans, they might be closer to being right. Social dysphoria simply means you're distressed by being misgendered or perceived as another gender. This is closer to a common experience of trans people. However, it also doesn't apply to everyone.